The year before I was born, my mother had a religious experience in the basement of our suburban Minneapolis home. She was convinced she heard the voice of God. I think it might have been Satan, but semantics. Nevertheless, that put my family down a path of religious fundamentalism where everything was forbidden. Elvis, dancing, movies. It all led to a highway to hell. Not the AC/DC kind of highway to hell, but more of a may you burn and rot forever in hell kind of hell. The only thing that didn't lead to hell was food and potlucks. Dante might have added gluttony to his third circle of hell, but he was Catholic, so what did he know? No, we fundamentalist, independent Baptists, we didn't worry about those kind of sins like gluttony and sloth, especially when the only thing we heard from our pastor week after week was that the true issue was that heterosexual couples just weren't getting married anymore. Speaking of hell, growing up under the constant fear and threat of hell, I grew up afraid of everything. I was also naturally predisposed to fear and anxiety. There was pretty much nothing that I did not fear, except for food. I feared clowns and balloons and loud noises and escalators and elevators and snakes. Right? So, back to fear. Given that I was afraid of everything, it just made perfect sense that after I graduated from the fundamentalist university, I got on a plane and I went to China. I chose China for several reasons. It seemed very far away. And also, I had recently become enamored with Zhang Yimou films, and specifically this one film called Raise the Red Lantern. And through that film, I developed a love of traditional Chinese architecture. And I was determined to go to the city where they had filmed Raise the Red Lantern and see this building in person. So I landed in the far northeastern corner of China, where Russia, North Korea, and China all meet. Or, as I like to call it, the Wisconsin of China. I had been there a few months when I finally was able to take a trip to see where Raise the Red Lantern was filmed. And I was coming home from Beijing on a 40-hour train ride because planes. And why take a plane ride when you can take a 40-hour train ride? When I had a layover in Harbin. And Harbin is a city that borders Russia, and it's also well known for its winter ice festival. So I got off the train in Harbin, and with my toddler Chinese, I was asking everyone if they couldn't help me find a dumpling restaurant. And suddenly I was approached by a young student, and between her broken English and my toddler Chinese, I thought for sure she was going to point me in the right direction. But I misunderstood. And suddenly I found myself in the back of a taxi with this student and two middle-aged men. And the taxi started driving far away from the city. And this was in the days before cell phones and Tinder dates. I couldn't just text my friends where I was. The taxi finally pulled up to a small apartment complex, and we were welcomed inside an apartment of a middle-aged couple. And I immediately saw that they had set the table with lots of side dishes. And within a few minutes, they brought out steaming platters of homemade dumplings. And for the first time, I had been invited, even though I kind of crashed, I had been invited into a Chinese house to eat a meal. And that was the first time that I felt a part of my adopted country and not just outside of it. And after lunch, everyone left, and the couple led me to their spare bedroom. And they told me to take a rest. And I sat on the bed, and I thought, I will not fall asleep. I will not fall asleep. But sure enough, I woke up 6 hours later to a bowl of steaming Nescafe coffee, and they made sure that I got to the train. And in that moment, I realized that suddenly my curiosity and my hope had joined forces over my fears of being kidnapped by random strangers. And I would call upon that same curiosity and hope when 2 years later I left China and I enrolled at the French pastry school in Chicago. And I was really afraid about how I was going to cobble together a career from all of my random hobbies and my love of Chinese architecture. But I was hopeful that I could. And I did. I became a pastry chef in Los Angeles. And over time, I kind of started to forget how and why I got to the table in the first place. And curiosity and hope had to kind of bring on a new superpower of tenacity to get me to where I needed to go, which was to open up a biscuit stall in carb-averse Los Angeles at Smorgasburg, LA. And I started doing lots of events and pop-ups in Los Angeles. And I started to remember why I became a chef in the first place. And it's because I wanted to set the table and create a welcoming space where people could feel a part of a community and not outside of it. Because that's my kind of religious experience. Thank you.